Hey, it's Tom here from ourhouseplants.com. Today we have a care guide and my experiences of growing the Monstera Standleyana, otherwise known as the Philodendron Cobra. So it's classed as a rare houseplant. It probably shouldn't be rare though. It is not particularly difficult. It's very fast growing. It's easy to propagate. It's got easy care. There should be a lot more of these plants available in shops, but there just doesn't seem to be. I can't really give you a reason why at this point in time. I suspect they might become more popular in the future, and they should do. They're really easy plants. They're really beautiful. They're just fantastic. So I don't know why they're not more popular, but it does have the rare tag on them. Depending on when you're watching this video, they could be really rare, or maybe they'd be very common. I don't know. But at the moment, in this time, in 2023, they are classed as rare houseplants. We have the standard variety, which is this one here. All the leaf shapes, by the way, are very similar. The fact they're all the same, there's no point in similar. They are the same. The difference between the three plants are the variegation. The original plant has white, creamy white variegation. This one is the Monstera Standleyana, which has yellow, creamy white. You decide how you want to describe the color. I don't want to get involved in that, but the difference is white, yellow, and then finally the third variety, which I don't personally own, is the Albo, Monstera Standleyana Albo. That has white variegation as well, but the difference between that one and this is that the variegation is much more. It's much more on the leaf. There's more of it on the leaf. You can have half moon. You can have completely white leaves. It's much more pronounced. That one grows a lot slower than these two. And that might explain why it's not very popular or available yet. This one is a little bit slower grower than the original. Again, it's likely because of the variegation. There's more variegation on this variety of the plant. So obviously, you might already know this, you might not, but if there's more variegation on the plant, means there's less space for photosynthesis, less space for the chlorophyll and the leaf to exist, because it's replaced with nothing. This is just variegation. There's nothing really going on in the plant here. So there's less leaf surface area for photosynthesis, which means it just grows slower. It's not a bad thing necessarily, especially if you think it's pretty. And the plant is quite fast growing anyway, so it's not a deal breaker because it grows a little bit slower, if you know. In terms of speed of growth, yeah, I'd say these are pretty quick growing houseplants, to be honest. For context, I bought this plant a couple of months ago, and this plant I bought around 2 years ago. So you can see the difference in size. It puts out a lot of growth quite quick. So yeah, it's quite a fast growing plant in my opinion. So we probably should also quickly talk about the name of the plant as well. So the common name that people might use is Philodendron Cobra. It's not a philodendron, it's a monstera. Monstera Standleyana is the proper Latin name for it. But some people will call it a Philodendron Cobra. Probably because it looks more like a philodendron, to be honest, than it does a monstera. There's no fenestrations, there's no splits in the leaves, no matter how old it gets, it does not fenestrate. And a fenestration example is here. So yeah, people possibly confused it with a philodendron, which might be the first part of the common name. But the cobra element is actually real. It does look like a snake, or in specifically a cobra rising up. It's too young at the moment, this plant, but when it gets a bit older and it's properly covering the moss pole, the leaves turn, they kind of stick out a little bit more like this. So when you look at it, it does look like a plant that's rising up rather than drooping down and hanging. I mean, this one, for example, this you can see it on this leaf here. I don't know if the camera's going to show it, but this plant is, the leaves aren't hanging down, they're kind of sticking out, just like a cobra would, which is why it's called cobra as a common name, but Philodendron Cobra. What does it want? It wants bright light. It doesn't want, I say it doesn't want full sunlight, but that's not strictly true. This plant here, this one growing here, is actually in a window that gets, it's southwest window, southwest facing, and it's right in the windowsill, so it gets a lot of sunlight. It's going to be too much in the summer. It's going to be too bright, and it's going to burn the leaves, so it's too much. But for now, it's doing really well, and it loves it. So why not? This plant, however, is about 10 feet away from the window in a west-facing window, so it will get sunlight late afternoon, evening time, but it's not only for maybe an hour, and that's it. And it's still quite far away from the window, so it's not getting enough light, I don't think, which is why the variegation has started to, on the newer leaves anyway, started to be a little bit less. It's still growing, it's still really fast. It's just shooting out. It's crazy. This is probably a couple of weeks of growth. It's very fast growing, even in not brilliant conditions. So yeah, as for what it wants kind of as much light as possible, but not intense, harsh sunlight. It's going to burn the leaves if it gets too much. There is a couple of burns on some of these leaves. I don't know if you can see them. I'll try and find some. But too much light burns the leaves, but it does want good light levels to do well. I'd say these are kind of thirsty plants. They're not excessively thirsty, um, but they're not ones that they're really adaptable, basically. You can maybe overwater them slightly sometimes by accident. Don't do it on purpose. Don't overwater plants, really, unless you can help it. It's not something you want to be doing. But if I have overwatered it a few times, and it's fine. I've also underwatered it. I completely let the soil dry out completely by accident, and it's fine. It can deal with days of no water without any real bad effects. So it's really tolerant. It can put up with a lot of treatment. The ideal situation is obviously to water it really well. Make sure the bottom medium is completely soaked, but not, give it a good drink basically, and then allow any excess water to leave the pots, so it's not sitting in water. You don't want to overwater it, but in my experience, it can cope with it. But I don't want to encourage that because I don't think it's not ideal. You don't want to be doing that really. You can end up with yellow leaves, and yeah, don't do it. But it's a really tolerant plant. But the ideal situation is water it well, wait to maybe the half or perhaps even all of it, or the potting medium is dried, and then water again. When it needs water, the leaves kind of hang ever so slightly. It's not obvious. If you've been around the plant for a while though, and you've had it for a long time, you'll start to notice what I'm talking about. The leaves do kind of hang slightly. It needs water. And when you're giving it too much, it has the classic crying leaves. Water droplets will appear in the mornings, usually on the end of the leaves. I've forgotten what the name of it's called. I'll put it here. There's a scientific name for it. It happens on a lot of plants. It happens on pothos, other plants, and it also happens on the Standleyana as well. It's not anything too bad. The droplets aren't harmful or anything, but it does show you that maybe you're overwatering it slightly, maybe a little bit too much water. Just cut back a little bit. It's an early warning sign of just be careful. And again, if you see the hanging leaves, if they start to look a little bit, water it. I'm not too rigid with my feeding regime with my houseplants. It's probably not the best way of dealing with them, but an all-purpose houseplant feed every 1 or 2 months tends to be what I do, and it's fine. Look at this. It grows. It's happy. That's all it needs. It's not a gross feeder, but make sure you do feed it. It does need some support. There's a lot of growth here. It produces a lot of leaves. It does need some fertilizer to really perform at its best. So don't neglect it. Do give it some. I feel like I'm being controversial with these comments because this is not a lot. There's obviously lots of other YouTubers and lots of other houseplant personalities, and they give their care guides and what works for them. And sometimes it's not the same as what I'm doing. It's a bit different. Some people have these plants in terrariums and they're spraying them and they're misting them constantly. I've got to be honest, my plant does not get that kind of stuff. It's not in a particularly humid location. It's just in a normal everyday room. It's in my study basically. It's just normal. There's nothing special about the room. The humidity is not excessively high. Maybe 60%, 50 some days. It's fine. It doesn't seem to matter. I feel though, if the humidity is very low, then like many houseplants, you're going to end up with brown tips and brown edges and stuff like that, and it will be susceptible to really low humidity. So do bear that in mind. If you have obviously if you're in a very low humidity house, then you're going to have to do something. But if it's just average like mine, then you probably don't have to do anything special, and it will still look great. Let's be controversial again. let's talk about the potting medium. I did have a plant. I did have this plant before. It's gone. It did not make it, shall we say. And the growing conditions were very similar. And there's only one thing that was really different, and that was the potting medium. I'm going to say something now that people might, in the comments, might argue with and disagree with, but I'm going to say it, okay? Both of these plants have proven what I think at this point. The Monstera Standleyana does not like peat-based potting mediums. Don't grow it in peat. Okay, this plant is growing in coconut coir, almost 100%. It's mixed in with some perlite because basically, like I said, I don't. This might be all. Wow, I never heard of that before. Or it might be like, yeah, I do that all the time, Tom. But there's nothing special. But what we have, how we buy it here is coconut coir is in big blocks. They're really dehydrated, and you sort of chisel a bit off, which is definitely the downside. I'd be honest, it is a bit of a laborious chore, but I think it's going to change in the future. But you cut a bit off, basically, a bit off, and then you put water in it. It just expands to like a small bit. Boom! It goes massive. It's really crazy. Yeah, so it's dehydrated blocks, and then it just expands into something big. So what I did was basically made my own. You cut a bit off, pull it in. I mixed it with, I don't know if it's perlite. I think it was perlite I mixed it with. I'm not sure. But just to give it a bit more drainage, because I wasn't sure what to expect. And so, yeah, this is like 100% coconut coir with, well, I say 100%, it's obviously not. Maybe 90% coconut coir and then 10% perlite, or gravel, or grit. Anything you want to add into it just to keep it a bit more open and free draining. And boom, this is what happened. It loves it. It's growing really well. Why that is, I'm not sure. I can't really give you an explanation. Maybe I know peat's quite acidic, so perhaps they're a bit sensitive to if it's alkaline or acidic. Maybe they don't like the acidity of the soil. Perhaps peat. I'm not sure. Um, but again, I don't know. But when you see other people with this plant, they have like one vine, and it sort of looks like it's hanging on, and I'm like, what's happening? And they're like, this is my plant, and I think it's great that they have it. I really do. I'm not knocking them at all. But these plants, they vine really easily. You take cuttings and new shoots come out all the time. It just wants to grow and it expands out massively. So just seeing one little vine going up a pole, that's not my experience. So I feel like the growing medium, there's something about it that makes a big difference. In my experience, that's what I suspect. I could do another video in a couple of years or less and tell you, no, I got it all wrong. This is what it was. But yeah, I feel like they're very sensitive to the growing medium. That's my thinking. That's my theory. That's what I'm working on at the moment. Um, I need to explain as well why this is happening because it might be happening to yours. Oh gosh. um, yeah, don't know if you can see that. But yeah, that's my take on that. So if you are going to use peat, you need to tell me in the comments of how it's working out for you because in my experience, it failed. It literally, my plant just went, it just gone. But if it's working out for you and you're getting a plant that looks really good and really healthy, then tell me about it. I want to know because I want to learn more about this plant. So do let me know what's going on with your experiences. Okay, so propagation. Um, this is not controversial. This is me agreeing with what a lot of people already say about this plant. Propagation is it's tricky. It doesn't always work. Generally speaking, I think monsteras have a really high success with propagation. Um, but this one seems a little bit more temperamental. I think what it is it's very sensitive to temperature, maybe more so than other plants. Um, it tends. You can take several cuttings, and the way to do it, I would say, is first of all, the easiest way is stem cuttings. So if you're pruning the plant, or if you just want to propagate, you take cuttings, just cut by a node. I might put a picture so you know what I'm talking about, but a node is just here. You probably can't see it on the camera, but the node, you cut there, you pop it in a bit of water, and roots will start to form. Hopefully, that's the plan. That's what you want to happen. Uh, what a lot of people say is that there's hit and miss. It's not like 100%, 90% success rate. You might only have 50% chance of the cuttings rooting. I don't know. I feel like it's something to do with the temperature. I did it in winter once, and not a single one had any roots, which I was really surprised about. Because at the same time, I was also propagating pothos, and all of those rooted. Even though it was a dead of winter, this plant, no, it didn't like it. So I would only recommend propagating it when it's warm. So late spring or summer. You might not have success if you do it other times of the year. But if you have, as always, I want to know about it. So do tell me your secrets, because I want to propagate this plant. It's beautiful, honestly. It's really, really nice. But yeah, as I said, take stem cuttings. That's the easiest way to do it. You can do air layering, other things like that, but that's a bit more complicated. Honestly, the most straightforward, easy way of doing it is stem cuttings. And by pruning the plant, which is essentially what you're doing by taking the cuttings, it stimulates new growth. So who wouldn't want a bigger plant? Who wouldn't want a bushier plant like this? So I do recommend stem cuttings. It's dual purpose. You get your cutting material, and you also encourage the mother plant to become more bushy and just bigger. So it's win-win. Vining. That's obvious why that's happening now in retrospect. It's not getting enough light. It's like any other plant, pothos, they all do it. If there's not enough light, they stop producing their leaves, and you get long trails with no leaves and nothing happening. I haven't picked them off. The leaves haven't grown and fallen off. They just do not exist. The leaves are much smaller. The variegation is practically non-existent. There is some, like I said earlier, there's always variegation on the leaves, but compared to some of the other leaves, there's very little on them. It's very basic, and the leaves are smaller too. So there's two reasons for that. The one is there's not enough light. The plant is creeping, trying to get closer to the window, and it's producing long stems. The second reason is it has technically run out of rooting space. The moss pole has reached the top of the moss pole. There's no further place for it to grip into. So there's twofold. Really, I need to expand the pole, and I do need to give it more light. That's the solution. So if your plant is doing either of these things, that's the most likely scenario. The trick, what I'm going to do eventually, I'd left it for this video, but what I will do is I'll cut down here, probably by a node. I might show you a photo of what that looks like. If I cut by a node, you'll get new shoots, which is what I've done below, further down as well. That's why it's so bushy. But if you cut just above a node, you'll get new shoots coming out. One, replacement, sometimes two, especially if the conditions are good. And that's how you end up with a bushy plant. So just cut the nodes, and then you'll have the cut ends at the top, which you can use to propagate new plants. Pretty much it for this plant, and that's all the basic care guide covered and discussed. If you want more information, if you want to read more stuff, go to my website. Like I said before, there is a link to the article specifically in the description below. Have a read, find out more. It's very detailed. And if you have any questions or comments, please just leave them below. I read them all. I try and respond to them. I want to know more about this plant. Tell me your experiences. If you have one, have you got any secrets that I haven't covered? Please share them. I'm really interested in hearing more. Reach out, get in contact. I'm very friendly, honestly. Very, very friendly person. But that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.